Come make your own history in a city that is built on history. Come to Charleston, South Carolina. On this episode of On the Map, we begin a great series in Charleston, South Carolina, with a visit to Mcleod Plantation, a phenomenal barbecue joint, and explore the mysteries of the night with Bulldog Tours. A mainstay in Charleston is low country cuisine. King Street provides many restaurants where you can find low country cuisine, including Virginia's on King, our first choice for breakfast to begin our day in Charleston.
Hello, my name is Eddie Wiles. I'm the executive chef here at Virginia's on King Street in Charleston, South Carolina. We are a low country southern restaurant. I've been here for going on 7 years now. And we do specialize in low country southern fare. It's really good shrimp and grits, fried chicken, of course Charleston's traditional she crab soup. A lot of our customer base, of course, are out-of-towners vacationing here in Charleston that would like to try some of our low country cuisine. Ages range from some of our local college students here on campus at the College of Charleston to retirees that are visiting Charleston, maybe relocating to Charleston. So, basically anybody in that age group. It's pretty well-rounded.
Their breakfast menu includes omelets, shrimp and grits, pancakes, French toast, and any kind of biscuit you can ask for.
I've been chef here for 6 months now, and I'm just looking to continue some of the traditional southern dishes, of course fried chicken, country fried steak, and shrimp and grits, and try and elevate some of the cuisine in this restaurant to what a lot of us chefs are doing these days, with using some of the local farmers. Of course, local seafood being here on the coast is really popular. As a matter of fact, I just received some heirloom tomatoes from 2 of our farms this morning at that time of year to get some of the juicy local heirloom tomatoes, as well as a lot of summer produce. We're open 7 days a week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we start serving breakfast at 7 a.m. and as I said, lunch and dinner as well. So we're open until 9 o'clock at night, and we do a Saturday brunch and Sunday brunch also. Those begin at 8 o'clock on Saturday and 10 o'clock on Sunday for our church crowds here in downtown Charleston.
We visited Mcleod Plantation for our first history lesson. Located across Charleston Harbor, Mcleod Plantation features an antebellum plantation house as well as one of the most remarkably intact rows of slave quarters in existence.
Mcleod Plantation Historic Site opened to the public in April, just a few months ago, and this site is a little different from other historic plantations that you find in the Charleston area. There's several things that set this site aside. One of the things that sets this site aside is the representative built landscape that we have here of all the different kinds of buildings that you would find at a historic site. The kitchen is the building that's behind me. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the other buildings that are out here. Other things that set this site aside is that the stories that we tell out here begin in 1851 and go through 1990. At most historic plantation sites, it's kind of the opposite, where it starts in the 1800s and goes up until about the 1850s and 1860s. Something else that sets this site aside is that the stories that we tell here are a bit more inclusive. We focus on the majority of the people that lived and worked here during that period from the 1850s until 1990, and that's the African Americans that lived here, both as enslaved people and then later free. The kitchen building was used up until the 1920s, and it was used to prepare food for the Mcleod family that lived in the big house here on the site. Other activities that took place in and around the kitchen other than food preparation would be laundry and child rearing. Young children that were, during the period of slavery, that were too young to work out in the field would be minded here in the yard. It's in places like this one, the kitchen that's behind me, that low country cuisine, Gullah cuisine was born. So folks that come to Charleston and indulging in the wonderful restaurants and foods that are here and that are local, regional flavor, a lot of those recipes were developed in buildings like the one that's right behind me. We're standing here in front of a house that's one in a row of 6 houses that were built in the late 1700s, early 1800s by enslaved people, for enslaved people to live in. These houses were lived in by enslaved people from about 1800 to 1865. These are the places where families were made, where people had relationships with one another, where people were born, people died. All of the complexities that you expect in a human life were played out here in this building behind me. These houses, after slavery ended, continued to be lived in, some of them as late as 1990. People lived in these houses, renting the houses. For one of the houses was renting for $25 a month in 1990. It had electricity but no plumbing. We're looking here at the front of the Mcleod Plantation house. The house was built in the 1850s, and as you can see, it's really a large farmhouse. It has 8 rooms and the porch here on the front. The garden that's in the front, the outline of the garden that's here in the front was added in the 1930s, as was the brick walkway and the brick steps. For the most part, this is pretty representative of what the house looked like when it was built in the 1850s, even down to the color of the paint on the pillars on the porch and on the siding of the house. And in the 1920s, the Mcleod family added this large porch to the back of the house. We don't know exactly why, but perhaps it was to create, to give off an impression of what people in the 1920s expected southern plantation homes to look like, despite the fact that most did not look like this. Most people that come to Mcleod think of this as the front of the house, but it's really the back of the house. And that's indicated too because all of the buildings associated with the plantation landscape are all behind on this side of the house. This 2-story building here was built, we think, sometime in the 1850s, and it is the gin house. In other words, this is the building in which cotton was ginned. The purpose of ginning to separate the seed from the cotton fibers. Here at Mcleod Plantation and other Sea Island plantations in South Carolina and Georgia, a special kind of cotton was grown, extra long fiber cotton that is similar to today's Pima and Egyptian cotton. And the gin house was just one step in the process of cultivating and preparing Sea Island cotton for market. So behind me is a stand of trees that within that stand of trees is a cemetery. The cemetery dates back to the 1840s as the earliest tombstone that's in the cemetery, and it was used by African Americans on James Island up until 1960 or into the 1960s. One of our preservation projects here at Mcleod Plantation Historic Site is to identify as many of the descendants of those folks that are buried here at this site and work with them in the preservation of the cemetery. On James Island and across the low country of South Carolina, many African American burial sites have been destroyed and built over. And today it's important for us to preserve and work with the descendants to preserve these sacred sites. So we're standing here along the banks of Wapu Creek, And today, Wapoo Creek is crossed over by drawbridge that takes you to Charleston, which is just a few miles away, 3 miles away. Historically, when this was a Sea Island cotton plantation during the late 1800s, the way to get to James Island and to Mcleod Plantation was by boat. And it was relatively isolated. And that isolation is one of the things that helped preserve this particular site and all of the buildings that you see here. The Confederate Army used this site as its headquarters at one point during the Civil War. Following the Confederate surrender of Charleston, Union troops used this site as headquarters for regiments, including the Massachusetts 55th U.S. Colored Troop Regiment. Following the war, the Freedmen's Bureau used the main house as its James Island field office. In fact, during the Freedmen's Bureau period, James Island was inhabited almost exclusively by freed African Americans who would patrol the banks of the Wapoo Creek and the Ashley River and the other creeks of James Island, preventing any white former landowners from getting onto the island. Later, white landowners were able to get onto the island and reacquired their plantations.
Leaving the beautiful countryside, we go for some great barbecue and shopping downtown on Market Street. On Market Street, right across from the open-air shops, is a specialty barbecue joint called Qology. Qology is the perfect place for barbecue lovers everywhere, as it is a place that claims to have the best barbecue in South Carolina.
Hi, I'm Samantha Igo, General Manager of Queology.
I'm Daniel, I'm the kitchen manager here too.
And we have the best barbecue in South Carolina. We go to different competitions. We have our wings, our barbecue pork, barbecue chicken, and ribs. And we just cater to the market here. It's our first store that's opened after going around to the competition. So
our barbecue here at Qology is very unique. We come in early every day to make sure everything is cooked fresh, straight from the smoker to the smacker. We don't have a freezer here, it's all, we get food delivered twice a week. Can't really do much better than that.
When you walk in the door, the vibrant atmosphere of the restaurant draws you to your seat. And as you seat yourself, you can expect to meet a myriad of different characters depending on what's going on that day, whether there's a sporting event or just a local crowd. Taking a look at the menu and picking from your choice of ribs, wings, a barbecue sandwich, or if you're into something new, a great pork taco, the one thing you'll soon realize is that Qology does live up to its claim of having some of the most flavorful barbecue in South Carolina. On a comfortable day in Charleston, the open-air shops at the city market are a great place to get your souvenir fix and kill some time.
The many different vendors have so many handmade items to offer, from paintings and jewelry to children's clothing and summer footwear, that you can find it all as you walk around sipping on some freshly squeezed lemonade. And when you're finished with your shopping, don't worry, you don't have far to go to find more to do in this historic city. Right there with the city market are various carriage rides that offer entertaining guided tours that take you around some of the oldest areas of the city. Or, if you're up for a stroll, you can take a walk down the waterfront battery and boardwalk.
If you find yourself on the boardwalk, it's a great place for a picnic, or just to take in the scenery of the water and the wildlife. A lot of people hang out down there, and maybe you can meet a few as you walk along by yourself, with someone, or with your pet.
Well, hi, How are you?
Good, how are you?
Hey, I'm David Henson. I'm from Bulldog Tours.
Brittany.
Hey, Brittany, nice to see you. I'm about to give you a tour of one of the most beautiful parts of America, a little city of Charleston that was originally surrounded by a wall for 100 years. And inside of this walled city, the ghosts and spirits are actually captured. So with that idea in mind, let's go for a little walk around our city.
As the night comes to life, we go with David Henson from Bulldog Tours to the older parts of the city, hoping to experience a different kind of nightlife as we look to meet with the spirits long since passed.
You're standing in front of the last building that the British built in America. The building was created by the King of England as a customs and exchange house, was finished in 1771. And not only was it the last building that the British built, but they actually built this building on top of an old dungeon that dates all the way back to 1680, the time of the pirates. And we believe that there is a ghost of a pirate that actually haunts the dungeon of this building. So let's take a moment and walk around over to the dungeon. Now in just a couple of minutes, we're going to actually go into the dungeon of this last building that the British built in America. And inside this dungeon, which dates back to 1680, is a little part of early America that is still left here. Not only did the British build the building on top of the dungeon, but they actually left the original part of this old dungeon for us to go in. Now our tour company does nightly ghost tours into this dungeon, and we call this building the Old Exchange. And the Old Exchange in the Provost Dungeon not only is a very beautiful little building here in the city of Charleston, but it's one of the most special buildings in America because this is where we actually signed the Constitution. 1788, the Constitutional Convention was held here. But 100 years before that, in the 1680s, this was the keeping place going back all the way to the time of the pirates. And since North Carolina is so instrumental with the pirate life in America, I know everybody will be truly interested to know that the gentleman pirate from Jamaica was captured, arrested, and chained inside of this building in the year 1718. The month was October. Stede Bonnet and 33 of his pirates were captured and kept inside this building. And during the time of October, November, and December, each one of those crew members actually stood trial. Their hanging day was December 10th, 1718. A cold, cold December day. The pirates were led out of this very dungeon, down to the battery, where they were actually hung on the edge of an oyster bank that we called Oyster Point at that time. And now this is the first place in America to ever deal with the pirates. So let's go inside and get an accurate view of what this dungeon is really like. So in October of 1718, Stede Bonnet and 33 of his pirates were captured, arrested, and brought into this dungeon where they were chained to the wall, this very wall, while they were forced to stand trial for piracy, which is of course a capital offense, and also for killing some Charlestonians. We believe it is the ghost of Stede Bonnet, that gentleman pirate from Jamaica, whose ghost actually haunts this building to this very day. They were led out of this building December the 10th, down to the battery, which was Oyster Point at that time, where we actually used a wagon to hang those pirates. They made the pirates stand on the edge of a wagon, slipped the noose around their own neck from the gallows, and the only thing the guard had to do was hit the rump of the horse that was pulling the wagon and pull it right out of the way. And now the pirates are now very slowly strangling to death, and we hung these pirates one by one. The only city in America to actually hang the pirates. We believe it is the method of burial, which is the reason why the spirits continue to haunt this dungeon. Because they took the pirates after they were already hung, allowed them to hang in the oak trees all weekend long. And since no one would dig the graves for these pirates, they were cut down out of the trees on Monday morning, what was left of the bodies after the pigeons and seagulls ate on them all weekend. The pirates were brought over to the edge of the Cooper River and dumped into the water. And they said as the high tide began to come in, you could see the 10,000 Carolina blue crabs finishing what the birds and pigeons and the seagulls had been working on all weekend. Could it be that the spirits are still here because of the method of burial? Could it be that the spirits of the pirates are still here also because they were scared to death of what was about to happen to them and they left their spirits in this building? Why the dead continues to walk? Well, it's a question we can't answer. But it's the best part about this old dungeon. And this is all original. Now, the floor is what dates back to 1680. They built the building on top, and they finished this building in 1771. It took them 4 years to build it. So what your tour guide is saying is that in 1680, they finished this floor of this building, and this was actually what they called the Court of Guard at that time. The Court of Guard was the keeping place for the prisoners going all the way back to the time of the pirates. Oh, well, we call this Bloody Alley. For 131 years, this is where we had legal duels in the city of Charleston. It was perfectly legal to stand here and shoot each other as long as you agreed for no police intervention before nor after the duel. And during that time, between 1730 and 1861, it was legal to stand here and shoot each other. And this old alleyway, well, to this day, the spirits continue to walk. I'm actually immersing you in spirits here because there have been over 1,000 duels in this alleyway. This is the one part of old Charlestown that is still here to this very day. The northern edge of the old walled city was at the end of this alleyway. And for almost 100 years, this was the walled colony, the only American city in North America for a wall to stand around our city for 100 years. Your tour guide is absolutely convinced that the spirits are walking with you when you are walking in this alleyway. That's the reason why we call it Bloody Alley, because the one reason why we really would fight each other, of course, is over a beautiful woman. And you know, it says something about a red-blooded American boy to this very day to love a woman enough to where he would give his life. And what about this little alleyway? This is where it all really happened. This is the mother church of the Episcopal faith in the southern part of the United States, St. Philip's. The congregation dates all the way back to 1681. Now this particular sanctuary dates from 1835, but there's a graveyard attached to this building. And the graveyard is over in this direction here, and this is considered to be one of the most haunted graveyards in America. Not only do the spirits continue to walk, but also by the hundreds and hundreds of graves here of the people that lived in the city of Charleston, your tour guide is convinced that these spirits are actually captured inside of this original old walled city. So could it be that the dead really does continue to walk? And have you ever taken the time to look? Well, according to the original African folks that were brought here in the very beginning of this colony, there were two kinds of ghosts, a haint and a hag. The boo hag, of course, being the evil spirit, but the haints, these are ghosts that you coexist with, that you live along beside you all the time. And these haints are around us day and night. A lot of times we never even notice, but most of the times we just ignore. Well, in this graveyard, we commune with these haints. Of course, we don't have any boo hags in this area because we have the church. We have the love that went along with this church. So the boo hags stay out of this area, but this is the best part about coming on a ghost walk here in the city of Charleston, is that you get to go back to the original places, and part of all of this is still here for you to be able to witness and to actually experience on a ghost walk in the city of Charleston. Come to Bulldog Tours. Let us show you these graveyards. Come to Bulldog and let us take you into the dungeon of the old exchange, and come to Bulldog Tours and let us take you inside the oldest graveyard in the city of Charleston.
On the next episode of On the Map,
We show you our favorite places to eat in Charleston, as well as an old rice plantation with a quaint inn to accommodate your comfortable stay.
if you want more On the Map, check out our other series and bonus content on our YouTube channel. You can also like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at On the Map TV.